Grace Point, I'm Daisy Tingley, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm so glad you joined us today, and we want to make sure you know no matter who you are, who you love, or how you exist in this world, you are celebrated, loved, welcomed, and affirmed. Enjoy the service.
In case you didn't hear what she said, no matter who you are, who you love, how you exist in this world, you are celebrated and welcomed in this space. Welcome to Grace Point. Come on, stand up with us. We want to hear you sing it. If you're lost and you're lonely, go and figure out why. Take a trip to your dark side. Go on and have a good cry. 'Cause we're all lonely. We're all lonely together. I want to see your sadness. I want to share your sin. I want to bleed your blood and I want to be let in. Don't we all just want to be together? Come on, sing it with us. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. What's heavy? What's heavy behind? If your face is down, take a look around. Do your fingers move? Do your lungs inflate? Are you tired? Are you weary of the hidden hate you've been holding? Have you never found it then bad because you did a bad thing? What's heavy? What's heavy behind? Leave what's heavy. Heavy behind. Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister? The only way to lose that fearful feeling, replace it with love that's healing. Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister? What's heavy behind? What's heavy? What's heavy behind? Come on, y'all sing it. What's heavy? Yeah. What's heavy behind? Oh, leave what's heavy. What's heavy behind? Yeah. You sound great. Thanks again for being here. We want you to take a couple of minutes and have a conversation with somebody around you. Maybe you've never met or haven't seen in a while. Do the meet and greet, if you will. We'll be back in a minute.
Grace Point friends and family, I'm going to invite you to take a moment to go ahead and sit down, or you can grab coffee. I know it is sad. We love interacting so much, which is really beautiful. So I'm Tiffany. I'm our director of our kids and our youth. Yeah, you can cheer for me. I don't always take that. And so, I just want to say, I am glad you're here. I am so glad and thankful for each and every one of you that is here in the room, and those of you online, those who are watching in the moment, and those who will find us some other time. And so today, to be really honest, this was not scheduled. And so, I'm going to offer a trigger warning. So all that means is I'm about to talk about something that's not happy in any way, shape, or form. And I know we don't want to, but we have to, absolutely have to. And so, if you are not in a space where you need to hear anything about gun violence or any type of homophobia, transphobia, I'm going to invite you to tune out, or if you need to leave, you can step away. So, at the same time, I'm going to invite all of us to just take a deep breath. Let it out. Don't hold your breath. And relax your shoulders. Find the ground. So, 2 things today. 1, today is Transgender Remembrance Day. It's a memorial day that, should not exist, okay? Memorial days exist because of something ridiculous that as humanity we have done to a group of people. And that is just hard. And so in general, that is what we're celebrating today. We are remembering those in our trans community we have lost, most likely to violence. And this started with a memorial of a trans person who, homophobia and hate took their life. And that is so hard to sit with. And thank goodness faith communities around the U.S. and all over are acknowledging this today, and individuals are acknowledging it, and organizations, because this last week was, Trans Visibility. Was it Visibility Week? Yes, Visibility Week. There are multiple days because we continue to ignore this community. That's the only reason I stumbled over it. And so today we remember everyone we've lost. And on top of that, last night, we had a mass shooting yet again in our country. Not only did we have a mass shooting, that's enough, but we had another mass shooting at a safe space, supposed to be a safe space for our LGBTQ plus community. And that, on the eve of a Remembrance Day, as a person in this community, is devastating. To wake up for Sunday, knowing that this is a holy day for me to do this and be with people I love in safe places, cultivating safety, is just really hard. And this is our community. And so today, as much as this is hard and heavy, it's okay for us to sit with it. And those of us who don't like sitting with feelings, it's okay. And if you are part of the LGBTQ plus community, I just want to continue to offer I don't have words, to be honest, but it's sympathy and hurt and pain and all of these things. I can't imagine what I don't go to bars, so in my head I'm you went to your safe place. And I'm a part of this community, and I have not ever gone into a designated space for me because I've been terrified. And there are people who are overcoming fears doing this. And on top of that, if you are trans, and there is no single way to be trans, and no one else has to know you're trans to be trans. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be fearful. It is okay to have all these feelings and heaviness. You are holy. Your body is holy. Your identity is holy. And all lives, I believe, in the LGBTQ community are sacred and beloved. And you are beloved. And if you are an ally, I need you to be an ally. And that means you use your voice and your platform to do something. You cannot be an ally to a single part of the LGBTQ plus community. You must be an ally to all of it. That is what an ally is and what an ally does. And if you have discussions and your frustrations with things I say, come talk. I will help you. And that's not a sarcastic thing. like, I will be willing and other people will be willing to help you learn how to be an ally. And as holidays come up, be an ally. Speak up, do something. Like, something has to happen, something has to change. And so as we sit, we're going to take a moment of remembrance, whatever that looks like for you. But it will be a moment of silence, and no one's going to be leading you in anything. I'm going to lead us through just like breathing and say like a single word, and I'm going to leave stage. Okay? And in that moment, you do whatever you need to connect to whoever you call God, the divine, or just sit in your holiness. And remember those people who we have lost. And unfortunately, the people we will continue to lose until we do something more. So as God's people, let us breathe in the breath of life. And let us let go of all the tension, stress, fear, pain, whatever we're holding on to. Breathe in and breathe out. Remember your belovedness.
Okay, everybody take another deep breath in. And take a deep breath out. Let out the deep breath, I mean. Okay, we're going to kind of switch gears into just like running down the list of stuff that's going on at Grace Point. Way less heavy, way more exciting, hopefully. Lots of holiday-themed activities, which is very exciting. But before we get into all that, we want to say good morning to our online community. Everybody give them a round of applause. Good morning. Also, my name's Amanda. My pronouns are she, her. I feel like I haven't said that in a long time, but hey, what's going on? Okay, if you scan the QR code that is on the cards in front of you or on the screen, you're going to get a link tree and a lot of buttons to all the things I'm going to talk about. All of that is kind of centralized for you. There's a weekly announcements button and a button for connection cards. The connection card can be used to sign up for our newsletter, learn how to get plugged in, all that good stuff. If you are looking to get involved here at Grace Point, the operation team really needs help. You would be just an extra pair of hands to help with the load in or the tear down process. It's a great opportunity to meet people, like make some new friends through shared labor. If you're interested, you can fill out the general volunteer form, or you can email Emily at emily.wire@gracepoint.net, or you can find Emily running around at the end of the service. You can be like, hey, how can I help? Don't miss the Advent book study. We're doing a study of The First Christmas by Marcus Borg and Dominic Crossan on Wednesday, November 30th, December 7th, December 14th at 7 via Zoom. You do not have to read the book to join in the conversation and the Zoom, but I mean, it is helpful because it's about the book. If you're in your late teens, early 20s/college age, we're starting a gathering outside of Sundays to talk about faith, hang out, and be besties. If you're interested, you can talk to Tiffany, or you can email Tiffany at tiffany@gracepoint.net. We've got some exciting events coming up, so mark your calendars. Grace Point is doing an ice skating event Saturday, December 10th at Centennial Sportsplex. Public skate starts at 11 a.m. Admission is $7 for ages 13 and up, and $6 for ages 5 through 12, and then free for 4 and under for the little babies. Centennial Sportsplex has skate rentals available for $3, so all you need to bring is a coat or a jacket. You don't have to bring your own skates. We have the holiday party coming up also, which is very exciting. The holiday party is going to be Sunday, December 18th, and will be from 6 to 9. We're going to have live music, special appetizers. I have it on very good authority that Santa's going to be there, which is very exciting. Right? Very exciting. So bring your entire family. Diskin is also a dog-friendly venue. They've got ciders, they've got cocktails, they've got non-alcoholic beverages. We're going to have that whole venue to ourselves, so it's a great opportunity to like meet people, get connected in the community. The stakes are so low. We're just like hanging out. So if you've never been to a social thing because you're scared, this is a good time to not be scared because it's the holidays, and also we're just hanging out. Again, that's Sunday, December 18th at 6 at Diskin Cider. Also, we have like our Yam quarterly get-together is happening today. If you need a little bit more information, you can talk to any one of the people sitting in this general area, myself, Emily, all of these good kinds of people. Okay. Last thing, each week we take a moment to acknowledge that the work we do to create a safe, affirming, and transformative community is made possible by your generous financial support. To those who already support us, thank you. And if you would like to become a part of financially sustaining the work we do in our community, here's how you can do that. You can text GracePoint to 77977. You can go to gracepoint.net/give. You can scan the QR code, or you can Venmo us at GracePointTN. Woo, that's all I've got. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bring me your weak, your weary. Bring me your strange and cold. I come for hope and healing, that you won't feel alone. So raise up, raise up, raise. So raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up, raise. I have told you that I am the way and the truth and the light. I am justice, I am all that is right. So carry on now, carry on now. And there's a galaxy behind your eyelids. There's a war in your house. And there's a meaning that is far beyond us. And there is courage in doubt. So raise up, raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up, raise up. I have told you that I am the way and the truth and the light.
Good morning, Grace Point. Good to be with you all this morning in person and online. I'm Hunter, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Kat Armas, who will be preaching this morning. Kat is a wonderful friend of Grace Point. She also is an incredible theologian and scholar. I actually got to study one of her books while I was in grad school, so I know we are all in for a treat this morning. Let's welcome Kat.
Fun information that you studied my book in grad school. I would love to hear more about that. So hello, I am so happy to be here. I've been here a couple other times, and it was always so much fun to chat with this community. I know that this is a special community, so it's always an honor to be in the midst of you all. So it is also an honor to close out this series that you all have been walking through. Naked spirituality. I will be sharing the final word of the 12, I believe, words that describe the spiritual life. And it is Advent, so it is just a brand new season starting next week, and I will be back in December, so I'm super excited about that. And yeah, isn't that just so wild? Another year in the books. And so I do hope that you get some time to slow down and reflect in the last weeks of 2022. But before I continue, I did want to also take, I guess this would be our second moment of silence, to honor the victims that died last night and those who were injured in last night's mass shooting at Club Q in Colorado Springs, in this senseless act of hate. Sending love and strength to the victims and the loved ones, the victims' loved ones, and to the LGBTQIA+ community. And so just want to take a few minutes to honor them. So, as I mentioned, I will be talking today about the final word of the series of words that y'all have been wrestling with. Words used to describe the spiritual journey, naked spirituality. And can I just say that I love this idea, this topic of nakedness. Now, funny enough, I'm working on the manuscript of my second book, which is slated to release next fall. And it is a devotional for those of us, including myself, who do not read devotionals. And I have an entire reflection on nakedness, both physical and spiritual. So I was actually pretty excited to read a book in preparation for this sermon about a naked spirituality. So if it's okay with you, I'd actually love to close out this series, but start off my conversation with you all with not my word, but a short word on nakedness. So to explain what he means by a naked spirituality in his book by that title, Brian McLaren quotes Richard Rohr, who says that, quote, "The goal of all spirituality is to lead the naked person to stand trustfully before the naked God. The important thing is that we're naked," he says. In other words, that we come without title, merit, shame, or even demerit. All we can offer to God is who we really are, which to all of us never seems like enough. I am sure that this is the way true lovers feel too. We come to God without shame, offering who we really are, which often feels like it's never enough. But the kicker, folks, is that it is. Everything we are is always enough. And it's beautiful because it's true. And we see glimpses of this truth all the way in the very beginning of the Christian story. Now, I know we all know the Genesis epic, so I won't harp on the details too much, except for one or maybe two. The detail that I love in this story is the question that God asks Eve and Adam right after that most terrible moment. Now, God asks a lot of really good questions in the Bible, right? If you heard my last sermon here at Grace Point, God asks Jonah another one of my favorite questions. He asks him if his anger is a good thing. And to find the answer to that question, you can go back and listen to that sermon. But it is one good question among many. Who do you say that I am? Jesus asks his disciples. Why are you crying? He asks Mary. He asks good questions. But there's one question in the Genesis narrative that I really love. After Eve and Adam eat the fruit, the story goes that their eyes are opened. And the very first thing that they do after that most terrible moment, after the world begins to die, is that they sewed fig leaves to hide their nakedness. Like, when you really stop to think about it, isn't that so curious? In the story, the entire history of the universe is changed by this catastrophic thing called sin that enters the narrative, and the direct result, Eve and Adam look down and go, wow, I'm naked, and then proceed to not be naked anymore. And then comes a really good question that God asks that I find to be so profound. Who told you that you were naked? Now, the weight of this question rests on the context, of course. A chapter earlier, after the woman is created, the text says that they were naked and without shame. What an interesting and beautiful detail. They're vulnerable, exposed, and it was enough. Their nakedness was good, just like all the other good things God created. It isn't until they first realized their nakedness that they first felt shame, and this makes me wonder if that's what God meant when God asked that question. Perhaps God meant something like, since when is your nakedness shameful? Throughout Scripture, human corruption ties nakedness and shame together, two sides of the same coin. We see this almost immediately in Genesis. After the flood, Noah plants a vineyard, gets drunk from his own wine, passes out naked in his tent. I mean, he had a really tough 40 days. His son Ham peeks in the tent and then runs to tell his brothers about it. Apparently, this was such a big deal that Noah responds by cursing his son's descendants. Now, what some scholars speculate is that what Ham did was actually ridicule his father in his most vulnerable state, causing Noah's seemingly outrageous reaction, a reaction that was most likely rooted in shame. Daniel Donahue writes that shame arises when we recognize threats to our vulnerability, leaving us fearful of showing our full selves because of the risk of being found weak, incapable, ugly, insignificant, and less than gloriously powerful and relational, delightful and lovable in the eyes of God and fellow humans. Y'all, I find it extremely unnerving that our most embodied selves, our truest, most vulnerable, intimate, and natural state, our nakedness, is tied to our greatest shame. Who told you that you were naked? I'm particularly interested in how Brené Brown defines shame, the shame expert. She says that it is the, quote, intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. You see, not only is love at the center of shame, but so is belonging. I think this is important because at the core, it is belonging that is fractured at the quote-unquote fall. You see, unashamed, Eve and Adam belonged to their bodies and their God. At home, in their nakedness, they communicated a deep truth to us, and that is that our bodies are our homes, the places where our souls reside. So what happens when our very homes become the sources of our shame? How can we find rest? How can we exist fully? How can we love ourselves and let ourselves be loved? Shame diminishes our potential for intimacy in every single aspect of life, moving us away from ourselves, each other, and the divine. I wasn't introduced to white evangelicalism until my early 20s, and because of this, I was naive to all of the things that came along with it. When I began seminary, it became clearer and clearer every week that the professors weren't really speaking to me in their lessons. Obviously, I was a woman, so I was very limited, according to their theology, with what I could do with the information I received, but also the lens from which my professors taught and from which they encouraged us to engage was their own, of course. Most were born and raised in the rural South, not too far from where they were teaching me about God, so the context from which they understood the world was such, of course. And the way they taught us to engage Scripture reflected this reality too. It was presented, though, as the right, true, normal way, of course. And I remember constantly feeling like nothing I learned about the world, life, my faith, or the Bible related to me. I grew up in a large Latinx city where we danced salsa on the weekends and greeted strangers with a kiss on the cheek. I was conceived and born out of wedlock, and I lived the first part of my life with my single mother in a small apartment in La Sahuesera, the southwest portion of Miami. And all of these details, which were essentially the opposite of those who were teaching me about God, made me feel tainted, like I didn't belong. Was I not enough? Good enough, domesticated enough, pure enough? Did the reality of my life, my experiences, my worldview make me too much or position me too far away from understanding and knowing God the way that I was supposed to? Trying to learn how to do the work of interpretation within a rural Southern framework only made me feel further from God, and it made me feel like my experiences, my community, my culture were only getting in the way of me being able to understand the divine. As a newer evangelical, I was told that shame was no longer mine to bear, but how could I not feel shame as a Latina woman trying to fit the mold of whiteness within the context of patriarchy? I felt shame because the message I received over and over and over again was that I did not belong. Now, God's desire for us, as beloved children is that we belong, and especially in our most vulnerable state. In our truest, naked selves, may we be fully known, fully loved in all of who we are, and know that it is enough. In this, there is true belonging. And it's this belonging that I want to narrow in on today as we close out this series. Excuse me, I'm getting over the flu, so. It's this belonging that I want to narrow in on as we close out this series with the final word, which is nothing. As a reminder, y'all have reflected on hear, thanks, oh, sorry, help, please, when, no, why, behold, and yes. And today we finish off with our final practice, which is contemplation or silence. I'm going to reflect a little bit now on this idea of contemplation, on the notion of sitting in silence with God. But first, I have to be honest. I kind of have a problem with silence. Not that silence itself makes me uncomfortable. I love sitting in silence, especially now that I have a young kid. Silence is wonderful and beautiful and very much sought out in my home. I'm one of those people that I don't really put music on in the car when I go for walks. I just love hearing nothing. I'm a fan of silence. But there's something I'm not a fan of, and that is a spirituality that asks me to shut myself in a room and be quiet. As a woman, as a Latina woman, this does not feel liberating. And not that Brian McLaren is asking us to do that, right? But sometimes that is the narrative that we have received or that we receive from the church about contemplation. In the evangelical world, we were taught that this is what we must do to hear from God, that we must have quote-unquote quiet time. We must shut ourselves alone on silent retreats in the hopes of hearing something of God. We must close ourselves off from the rest of the world, focus our attention solely on the mind. And listen, there is room for that. There are times in our lives when that is, necessary and helpful, no doubt. But I do not believe that these things alone tell the story of contemplation, of living a life of awareness, of an ear tuned to hear from the divine. There's this overlooked passage in Jeremiah that a dear friend pointed out to me one day that changed me. In chapter 9, we find God upset at the injustice of God's people, so people call forth a lament. But God gives them specific instructions in doing so. God tells them to call for the wailing women to come. Send for the most skillful of them, God says. Let them come quickly and wail over us until our eyes overflow with tears. You see, these wailing women were skilled grievers, and the people were called to listen to their lament so that they may be led in it also. And friends, is this not a form of contemplation? Was God not speaking, communicating deep truths through the wailing, the grieving, the lamenting of women who were not silent, who the people were called to listen to? You see, I'm not interested in a spirituality that divorces my mind from my body, from the land, from my community, or from our collective voices. I'm interested in a spirituality that wails. But as I mentioned earlier, more than one thing can be held within contemplation. For many marginalized people, including my Indigenous ancestors, contemplation carries a particular weight. For those whose voices were silenced once the colonizers arrived to the scene, spirituality, in order to thrive, had to have an interior dimension to it, no doubt. But theirs was not a contemplative life focused solely on intellectual musings. It may have been silenced by the dominant culture, but it was not disembodied. In fact, I argue that the faith of our ancestors, of our abuelitas, is not an intellectual faith, but one that lives in the hands, in the preparation of food and clothes, and the taking care of the land. I argue that these embodied practices are a form of contemplation, of a contemplative spirituality that is not lofty, but the kind of contemplation we arrive to not by disconnecting from ourselves, or from the world, but by connecting deep within the stories that live in our bodies. It's connecting to the stories around us, the stories the land tells us, the stories the people tell, the plants and the animals tell. It's paying attention. It's beholding the divine in all things. Friends, I think this is how many of our ancestors held on to their faith in the midst of oppression, suppression, and domination. And I think this is how we cling tight to ours. And sure, this can happen at home, alone, as you sit still, unhurried, focusing solely on your breath. But it can also happen while you're sitting under the oak tree, or walking your dogs, or while standing in line at the grocery store. Contemplation isn't about shutting ourselves off from the world, but about allowing ourselves to be awakened to all that is around us, primarily that which is overlooked, from the person sitting in the corner on the sidewalk to the creature building its nest in the tree. This is what I appreciate most about Jesus, who asks us to look at the birds of the sky, to notice the lilies of the field. Jesus often pointed us to the overlooked, the forgotten, inviting us to notice, to look closely. One of my favorite examples of this is found in Mark 12 in the story of the poor widow who gave everything she had. The narrative begins by saying that Jesus sat across from the collection box for the temple treasury and observed how the crowd gave their money. I wonder what specific things Jesus was looking for. Was it her? Or was he simply observing, noticing things as Jesus does? The text then says that one poor widow came forward, put in 2 small copper coins worth a penny. Then Jesus called his disciples over and said, "Look, I assure you that this poor widow has put in more than everyone who's been putting money in the treasury. All of them are giving out of their spare change, but she, from her hopeless poverty, has given everything she had, even what she needed to live on. Now, I've heard countless sermons praising this woman for giving all she had as proof that we must do the same, right? But when I read this story, I don't hear Jesus telling the disciples, do what she does. Instead, I notice Jesus saying, first and foremost, hey, come here. Look at this woman. Notice her. After seeing what she has done, Jesus called the disciples over, encouraging them to observe her. You see, he wasn't giving them a guilt trip, as it often is implied. Look at her, he says. Look at the woman that no one ever looks at. The disregarded, the pushed aside, that which we think there is nothing to learn from, pay attention to her. Barbara Brown Taylor notes that in order to see all there is to see, we must learn to look at the world not just once, but twice. The kingdom of God is this way, isn't it? Hidden in plain sight, and Jesus beckons us, friends, to look and then look closer. But this doesn't come easy. In fact, it takes a contemplative spirit, right, to take a closer look, to learn from the world around us. To really see all that is happening in the natural world, we must trust that all things have the potential to teach. We must believe that there are truths we can learn about the divine in all things, from the ant to the elephant, from the widow to the child, if we're willing to listen. In fact, McLaren talks about silence as listening, an active silence. I believe to really listen, we have to pay sacred attention. We have to be attentive. We have to act as participants, expectant that we will hear from God wherever and however God chooses to speak. Thomas Merton once called the fields, the rain, the sun, the mud, and the wind our spiritual directors. They form our contemplation. They instill us with virtue. They make us as stable as the land we live in. And I want you to notice how the elements, the natural world itself, speaks and teaches. We often tend to reduce both people and the natural world to empty vessels, listening only for what God might speak through them instead of what they might be teaching us themselves. As Anishinaabe writer Patty Krawick says, listening only for what God might be saying through something diminishes our investment in the world around us and disconnects us from everything, including people, because we don't listen to them either. Friends, what truths, what wisdom does the world and do people communicate in and of themselves? And do we believe that this wisdom is divine? I think Job was privy to this, like the biblical Job. He may be known for his unrelenting faith in God, but Job stands out to me because of the way he understands the natural world. When his friend tells him to repent so that his fortune will be restored, Job declines his advice by reminding him that divine wisdom can be found in the places we aren't expected to look. Ask Behemoth, and he will tell you, the birds in the sky, and they will teach you, says Job. Or talk to the earth, and it will teach you. The fish of the sea will recount it for you. See, Job reminds us that there are endless lessons to learn from the world around us, from plants and animals who know the ins and outs of what it means to survive and thrive and flourish in this world. Even the Bible reminds us that all created things have potential to speak and to teach if we're willing to notice. This is one of the greatest parts of being human, finding kinship with all of creation as we learn more about ourselves and the divine among them. This is where we experience our deepest sense of belonging. So McLaren shares a story that I thought was a perfect way to describe this belonging, this kinship that I'm referring to. He mentions a story by his friend Steve Bell and how once at a concert, Steve's piano player Mike was taking a solo and he seemed enthralled, inspired. There was a magical energy to this piano solo, he explains, and I'm sure you've seen or experienced something similar. So Steve, intrigued by what he was doing, locks eyes with Mike and begins playing on his guitar, trying to do everything he could to support Mike's musical ideas, trying to accent his playing, his energy. He says, not always, but often enough, you can get so absorbed by what another player is doing on stage that you almost lose consciousness of yourself as you become absorbed toward another, he says. And he noticed that while he was playing off of Mike, Mike was also playing off of him, and the two were in this sort of cosmic synergy, completely enthralled and lost in each other's energy, a psychic vertigo, he called it. And he says that after that, he was weepy for weeks. Like it really got to him, really moved him, because he felt God speak to him in that moment and say, this is who I am. This synergy, this feeling. He explains, the phrase that has come to me since is mutual othering. The highest moments of human experience and fullness occur when we lose ourselves or finally find ourselves in flourishing the other mutually. And this is because it is in these rare moments of mutual othering that we most resemble the one whose image we bear, God, whose oneness is not a numerical or numeral oneness like a tree is one, but relational oneness like a forest is one. And friends, when I read this, I could think of nothing more but belonging. This is what it means to belong to each other, to the divine, to ourselves. This is what it means to be so in tune with that belonging that we lose ourselves in the flourishing of another, the flourishing of all that is around us. This is what it means to listen, to pay attention. This is the contemplative life that doesn't ask us to disconnect, but one that asks us to do the opposite. One that asks us to go deeper. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but I was sick with the flu this past week and was locked up in my room feeling miserable, which, by the way, this is my PSA. If you have not received your flu vaccine, please do if you are willing and able, because this is the worst they've seen it in 10 years, and it is absolutely brutal. But by the 5th day, I was so tired of being cooped up within my 4 walls, and I kept looking longingly out the window at how gorgeous the days seemed, and because of the chilly weather, I was kind of nervous to go outside. So I went up to my spouse, and I was just pouting and upset, and I was just telling him, man, so many beautiful days have passed without my enjoying them, and I was sad that we missed a friend's birthday party and my daughter's music class, and I was just all pouty and annoyed, and that this flu had stolen so much from me. I was frustrated because I hadn't had time to write this sermon, and I was trying to think about what I'd say about silence and contemplation when I hadn't been very contemplative myself in my bedridden state. After venting to my spouse, I took a chair. I sat in the sun in my backyard under Miss Lady Oak, the tree that towers above my house like a promise, and I closed my eyes and I listened. I listened to the wind shing through the branches of the trees, some bare, some with leaves still hanging tight. I listened to the squirrels scurrying from branch to branch, finding food. I listened to the starlings and the sparrows sing their truths to one another. And I beheld the divine in all of it. And I no longer felt pouty and annoyed, although it would have been perfectly fine if I still did, and the goal wasn't to not feel that way per se. It just sort of happened when I found myself in the midst of divinity. And in that moment, I realized that this is what contemplation is all about, right? It's not about, like I've said, disconnecting myself, but about connecting deeper to belonging to my body, to the world, to the land, to the wind, to the trees. In that moment, I needed to step outside of my 4 walls to feel alive again, to remember the web of life that I am a part of. But it doesn't always have to look exactly this way. Sometimes contemplation means we need to sit and observe like Jesus did, noticing the widow doing the thing that will awaken something in us, remembering that we do not exist in isolation, but each of us is part of the system that exploits her and others like her. Sometimes contemplation means we listen to the wailing women, letting their lament lead us in ours, remembering that grief does not belong to one person, but it is a collective experience. And I'm thinking about Club Q. Like Lila Watson reminds us, our liberation is bound together. And if this is true, then so is our grief and so is our healing. We belong to one another. Sometimes contemplation means looking to Behemoth to learn the things of God. And I'll admit, I have no idea what Behemoth is, but like Job, it means trusting the earth to teach me about divinity, or trusting my child who is too young to speak to teach me some important truths about life. Contemplation is remembering that we are part of a rhythm and an ecosystem of belonging, one that is greater than us. The relationships that sustain us are rooted in mutual flourishing, and it begins from within and flows out into the rest of the world. May you go in that truth today, my friends. Thank you.
Wasn't that beautiful? Let's give her another appreciation. Thank you so much, Kat. That was amazing. Grace, before we want to leave you today, it's a holiday week, and so there's a song that one of my favorite artists, Ben Rector, wrote. It's a Thanksgiving song. So as you go, whatever your traditions are, whatever you're doing to celebrate this holiday, just go in peace and love and family and all of the beautiful things that means. Let's do it. Familiar highway, lined with leaves turned brown, making my way back into my hometown. Funny how this all looks different, but it feels the same. Like how life never stops changing, but some things never change. So fill your cup and fill your drink and fill this place with family, the kind of love 1,000 years can wash away. 'Cause the older that I get, it seems that life is short and bittersweet. Thank God for this Thanksgiving Day. Watching football and watching families grow. The old kids' table all have kids of their own. I'm starting to see my grandfather in my nephew's eyes. Mom still can't talk about him, no, and not almost cry. So fill your plate and fill your drink. Fill this house with family, the kind of love 1,000 miles can't wash away. 'Cause the older that I get, it seems that life is short and bittersweet. Thank God that it's Thanksgiving Day. Oh, yeah. So fill your plate and fill your drink. Put your dishes in the kitchen sink and let the leftover years just wash away. 'cause we made it through, I do believe, the longest year in history. Thank God that it's Thanksgiving Day. Oh yeah. Oh, thank God.
To cry, goodness, that really got me. Okay, your benediction today comes from Cole Arthur Riley. She's on Instagram at Black Liturgies. You should give her a follow. She's the best. Her prayer, I think this came out yesterday or today, is to the God who knows. Remind us that you yourself contain multitudes, and let us encounter the divine that refuses to be contained to human definition or imagination. Have mercy on those who grieve today and grant them the courage to stay near to themselves. Grace Point, we love you and we're proud of you. Have a great week.